Hey folks, it's time for another episode of This Week in Photo. This one's about getting noticed in a distracted world. This is TWiP. Hey folks, welcome back to TWiP. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today on the show, I've got two of my good friends, Mr. Jake Hicks and Mr. Wayne Johns from across the pond are on the show and in the stream to talk about ways to get noticed or, you know, to get the attention of people that are otherwise distracted online. But we're going to go a little bit deeper on that. And Jake came up with this topic, and it's the sort of the idea of what part of it is when we create, should we be creating more like musicians? Where, you know, say a musician would create a track and release a track every now and then, and then, you know, put those tracks together and then they're a cohesive body of work or an album, like say the White Album from Jay-Z or something like that, right? Or Rehab from Eminem, right? So they put these together, that is sort of a slice of what they're feeling at the time. Should photographers do the same thing? Should we be creating a series and putting them together as sort of an album? But these guys are going to help answer that question. Like I said, it's just Jake Hicks on the show. Mr. Wayne Johns trying to stay awake over there.
How you doing, Frederick? Yeah.
Look at that. How you doing, Frederick?
I'm doing good, guys. How are you guys doing?
I'm just doing my bit for hairy people all over. I've got you two there.
You're just bragging. Yeah. You're just bragging. Now, you know what I say? You know what I say?
Shining in this light.
When it happens, Jake, when you get a little bit older, it's going to be so much rougher on you. Because you're going to be like, I can't feel anything touching my shoulders anymore. What is that?
True, yeah. I'm going to get cold ears and everything. It's not going to be nice. Yeah.
Oh, I love this. I love this. All right, guys. Well, let's start. Jake, let's start with you, man. Just a little bit of background on yourself as a photographer and the kind of stuff that you do and, you know, your work.
Sure, yeah. UK-based shooter here, just outside of London. I've been shooting sort of nearly 20 years, I suppose, on and off, whether it be commercially or working in a studio. And now I'm probably known best for my colored gel shots. So I also do a lot of workshops and training and education here as well as abroad as well, and videos online as well. So just generally keeping myself busy. But I think lighting is definitely what I'm known for and certainly what I'm passionate about. Yeah,
and it's beautiful lighting. It is. Well, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wayne Johns, man, what about you? You're doing something similar but completely different. What are you doing over there?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm a fashion, beauty, and advertising photographer. I've been in the industry probably just over 25 years, a little bit longer. I'm sort of based in London, but, you know, work all over the world, really. But I've pulled back from the commercial world a little bit in the last few years to, you know, take on other topics of my interest, i.e. podcasting and shooting my own stuff. So, yeah.
That's cool. Well, welcome. So like we were saying in the quote green room, podcasting is not that easy. So congratulations for keeping it going. But you gotta catch up to me, man. This is episode 559. Just saying. And you guys,
how long have you been doing it, Frederick?
TWiP is gonna celebrate a 10-year anniversary soon. We're gonna do something special. But you know what? When I say that 555 or 559 number, it is a little bit deceptive because it's actually much larger than that, because that's 559 episodes of This Week in Photo, not including many, you know, the dozens of one-on-one interviews that I've done, like with each of you guys and all those. It's not counted in that number. So it's probably closer to 1,000 or more that we're at right now. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun. So I know
how many podcasts do you put out a week now?
We put out usually it's about 2. So there's a one-on-one interview and then this show. Yeah, 2 a week.
Okay.
2 a week.
2 a week.
You want to know the secret? Can I tell you the secret?
Gone up.
I got to tell you the secret.
Since 10 years ago, though.
It always gone up. Yeah, it used to be 1 a week, and that was aggressive. The secret is live switching is what we're doing here. Like right now, you know, for the folks that are watching Inside Baseball, we use an app called Ecamm Live, which is allowing me to do this. Basically, the entire show that people are watching right now, bandwidth notwithstanding, is produced with Ecamm Live and Skype. So that allows me to bring these guests in and switch cameras like this to this guy and to this guy and to this guy, and then go to 3 shots and all that stuff. But to record it, I'm recording everything live, and then I take that live file, or I take the recording from the live, because this is all being dumped on my hard drive as well as going out to YouTube. I take that and then I sweeten it up and make everything pretty in Final Cut, and then that goes out as a podcast. So it's easy. Once you do a couple hundred of them, it's a walk in the park.
Yes, exactly. What could go wrong?
It's a
couple hundred.
Yeah, just do it. 1,000 hours.
Not got many to go, Jake. Only 193.
I don't want to.
All right, folks, I want to remind a little bit of housekeeping. I want to remind the folks in the chat room that, of course, this is interactive because we're live. So if you want to ask these guys questions about the topic, or, any photography stuff, specifically the topic tonight, which is about how to get noticed in a distracted world, please feel free to throw your question in there. We'll get to those in the Q&A segment, which will happen a little bit later in the show. Also, I want to thank our sponsor for this episode of TWiP, and that's our friends over at Creative Live. So Creative Live has thrown down the gauntlet and sponsored the last several episodes of TWiP, including this one. They're giving $10 off your purchase. All you have to do is use the code TWIP10 over at creativelive.com when you purchase one of their courses, and we'll save you $10 just like that. Boom. All right, guys, let's dive into the topic of the day, or of the episode. Jake, why don't you, since this was your idea, man, this whole show is your fault.
Yes, Jake.
Why don't you give us the background of why you want to discuss? Well, tell us what we're discussing and why you want to discuss it.
I think fundamentally it comes from maybe a newer generation of people, not just photographers, but all of us really becoming a little bit impatient when it comes to the content that we consume, whether that be Netflix, whether that be music or education. And, I think movies are becoming less popular than like a TV series now. I think we all watch TV series in these little bite-sized chunks. Yet, it's been a while since I've been to the cinema myself to see a movie. Music as well. I think, Spotify and that sort of thing, and the way that business is going, I think it promotes short-form content.
Yeah.
You get paid if you're a musician, you get paid per song, not per minute or per album. So you're starting to see many more songs coming out, and the albums becoming longer, and the songs becoming shorter, because people, like that side of the music industry is affecting the way that that art is being crafted, as it were. And YouTube, as you need to make short, snappy videos. I mean, how often do we all look at a YouTube video that's 25 minutes, 30 minutes long and go, yeah, no, I'm going to skip on that one. I'm going to go for the one that's 6 minutes long or 10 minutes long. It's just human nature. We're all very impatient, and we want it all now. And I think from a photographic point of view, years ago, and I'm sure Wayne will attest to this, but we used to shoot projects, and those large projects would take maybe many weeks or months, and then we would release a full project. Maybe it would be an exhibition or a book, or even just a portfolio as a whole. It would be a finished body of work. Whereas now, I think that's a lot harder to do. And I think now, to be seen and noticed, you have to be releasing an image a day on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, to keep that drip fed attention span of an audience. I think if I was to put out an image a day for the next month, say that's 30 images over the next month, or release 30 images in a month's time, I'm pretty confident that I would have more traction if I was to release one a day, as opposed to releasing a body of 30 images at the end of it.
Something has to give, though, right, Wayne? I mean, if you're going to release one a day, your creativity is a finite resource, right? So it's not an infinite flow of ideas that you can pour out to feed a somewhat willing audience, right? How do you come in on that?
That's what I mean. I agree, and social media is changing so much, and I think it's turning into the convenience market almost. Short, sharp, and sweet, and people in their lives just don't have time anymore, so they want it now. You know what I mean? It's that quick. But yeah, posting out every day. I mean, when you look at all the social forums as well, unless you can get one to post to all, I mean, it's just time consuming. time consuming as well.
Yeah.
And like you say, you've got to keep the content is either relative to a project, or you just got to keep imagery up there, just to keep your brand name up, or just keep your brand status present online. And then you got to keyword and hashtag the damn things in a way that they get recognized. And if you do it wrong or too many, you get silent blocking from Instagram, which you don't even know you're blocked.
Yeah.
That's the strangest thing. So it's quite, I think it's quite messy at the moment. And personally, I've seen a lot of views on images dropping, like a lot of people, when the algorithms change.
Yeah.
And Facebook, well, I don't even talk about Facebook. It's like dying on its ass. Yeah.
You can't. Yeah. I'm still trying to understand. I feel like by the time I understand how to become an expert at Facebook, Facebook's going to be gone. Party's going to have moved on somewhere else. I'm
exactly.
like, I finally got it. Yeah. And then the party's moved next door. So to both of you guys, starting with you, Jake, if you're doing that, you're looking at this through the lens of, okay, I got to keep this cadence of creativity up, and like Gigi says in the chat, feeding the monkeys, right? I got to keep feeding the monkeys over and over again, and you like I said, you only have so much creativity in you. Don't you run the risks twofold if you decide to go that route? One, A, burning yourself out, and B, burning out your audience, and I'd even add a C in there. Using that whole, price perception or quantity equation, if people think there's always more coming, doesn't that make the work less valuable? Because it's like, if I know, every day somebody's going to throw a gold bar in my yard, I'm gonna behave differently than if I have to work really hard for that bar and I only get one a year. What do you say to that?
I think we're in a consumer market, and what I mean by that is that it seems to be that a lot of us, yourself included, and me, and a lot of other photographers at the moment, like 99% or 90% of our work is given away for free. People get to enjoy our art forms for free, and then there's a small percentage of people who you are baiting in to pay for the last 10%. Maybe the creme de la creme, and you've got it with TWiP Pro, and I've got it with workshops, as opposed to giving away my Technique Tuesdays. Like, I think there's a balance there for sure, but I don't think you can burn people out, unfortunately. I just think that people will just look at your image for a second and move on, and I think that's just the culture that we're in, and I think that's what people want. They just want to consume it and move on to the next one. We've all been there on Instagram, just absolutely just going, just looking at images for fractions of a second, and that's really all it takes for us to consume that content. Now, how do we stop them? How do we stop them enough to gain their attention for long enough? Is it a case of producing a huge body of work? Will that stop them? I'm not convinced it would. No, I do think that there is more power in releasing them incrementally.
I 100% agree with releasing incrementally, because the idea is, like I said, it's quantity versus quality versus quantity, or vice versa. And I think about it like this, like we brought up the idea or the analogy of music and tying that metaphor into photography. If your favorite artist, I don't care who it is, whoever your favorite artist is, they release an album every couple of years or a year or something. And when that album comes out, you're excited, you're like, wow, so-and-so finally released another album. But if, conversely, if that artist had been releasing an album every single week or a song every single week or every day, I don't care who it is, I'd get sick of them. And I would
agree with you, Frederick. But you have to bear in mind that the musicians that you're referring to are established musicians. They're the big name boys who you already have in your mind, and you're waiting for those albums. What about new artists trying to break into the music industry now? I mean, really, if they can't get onto Spotify, then they can't get the traction and the listens. And like them just bringing out an album in 2 years' time, like how is that going to get them the traction that they need? I agree with you that yes, my favorite band bringing out an album in 2 years' time, absolutely, I'm going to love that way more than listening to one of their songs every month from now until the next 2 months, for sure. But what about new people emerging? And I think that's the same in our industry as well.
Well, Wayne, where do you fall on that? I mean, is that the case? I mean, or how do you look at it?
I agree completely because, and I don't think it's just our industry either. I think many industries are suffering this online bug, this social media bug, social media advertising platforms that are now becoming the be all and end all of, getting businesses noticed and keeping work coming in. So I completely agree with what Jake's saying, and especially in some business areas where there's a saturated market, and unfortunately one of our type of market where there's a lot of consumerism and amateur and pro-am markets that want to have a little go at some commercial photography. If you want to use our industry as that example, they'll quite happily do it for free, and the magazines on the flip side will quite happily take them for free because they don't have to pay any money. They get content for nothing. They're getting drip fed free, and the person shooting it is getting some notification or some recognition in the industry. But for that one moment, the next day the magazine will move on to someone else, and that guy's 15 minutes of fame is already history, absolute history. But there's so many of them because it's a saturated market. That's what's diluting it even more and harder for people to keep up with it. Yeah. Digital and technology and social media is I think the black stick for that. Yeah.
But it sounds like there's two problems, and we're going to spend the first part of the show defining the problem. I know people are probably like, okay, what's the solution? You've diagnosed it. Now what's the cure? But it's twofold because there's, like you said, Wayne, there's oversaturation of photographers hungry. And let's just throw them a bone and say they're all talented, hungry, talented photographers, a koi pond full of them, right, that are hungry for the next piece of bread. And then on the other side, you've got a giant crowd of people that have attention deficit disorder, right? And Jake, if you overlay what you're saying, okay, we need to fire hose them first and then turn the spigot down, as our popularity rises. How does that work? Because that sounds like a dystopian future for anyone that is trying to get a name noticed in this world, because there's so much noise on both sides. How do you navigate through the noise and punch a hole through it? So that's good, Jake.
Well, I mean that is the $1 million question, and I'm sure
literally
wealthier people if we knew the answer to it. But I mean, digital technology has proliferated this ability in everybody to be able to make music online. For example, I've got a Mac laptop here. I can sit here and begin to make music. I can teach myself from YouTube videos, and I have access to be able to create music. And the same goes for photographers. We can pick up a camera, watch some YouTube videos, and we can start generating actual art that could potentially be sold. And like you said, let's just assume that everybody is good. Well, when it comes to art or music, anything like that, it's subjective, and if you can sell it, then it's good. So everybody is potentially competing with one another, but how do we try and stand out from that? That's what we're all striving to try and do. I mean, and like from my point of view, a photographic style is what I believe is enabling me to get a little bit more traction than others, like having a defining style that people feel comfortable with seeing day in, day out, and know that when they come to me, they're going to get something that they enjoy. I think that sometimes some photographers can produce images that are maybe a bit too vanilla, a bit too stale. Like musicians do not try and make music that appeals to everybody. In fact, the music industry is totally the opposite to that. They pride themselves on being different. Oh God, we're not like that, and that's terrible. Like we're nothing like that. Don't get me wrong. Norwegian underground techno music is a niche, but the point is that that's a market, and you can certainly, gun down that market, as opposed to trying to make elevator music that is generic and is never really going to stand out. And I think photography is the same, and art is our only trump card, is the fact that we have the ability to have a personal style, whether it be in music or imagery.
Yeah, I agree. So then here's another twist on the topic. Then, how do you define how much is enough audience-wise? Like, in other words, what is success, right? Is it, okay, I know I'm popular And I know I'm answering this question in my head as I'm saying it. But I know I'm popular when I have 1,000 people following me, or I have 1,000 customers that are buying my prints through my online store, or 10,000 people that are in my community, or whatever. Wayne Johns, what's the metric? How do people? I know it's a sliding scale, and it's going to be different for all genres, but generally speaking, is there some kind of metric we can apply to? Okay, I feel like I'm successful now. If I can just maintain this number, I'm good. What do you think?
Do you know what? I don't know if, especially on something like social media and Instagram, that, if you get up to the top, that you think you're plain sailing. I think because Instagram changes so much, its algorithms change so much, that whole template shifts constantly. And I don't think, it's not like an SEO. I don't think you can keep yourself at the top there. So I think that's ever changing far too much, and the limitations that Instagram put in, using Instagram as a social platform for point. I think it changes so often that your ratings go up and your ratings go down, then they go up, and then one week you hear everybody complaining that they're getting 200-300 likes less than they were getting the week before for the same sort of image quality with the same sort of hashtags and things like that. So I'm not sure if there is a consistency in there. I see it's quite messy and quite quite up and down at the moment.
Yeah.
But then if I can throw a curveball in there, I know another good friend, fashion photographer in London, who, although he's on Instagram, doesn't spend all his days plugging away and trying to get lots and lots of followers. But
is that person from an older generation of photography?
Not really. I mean, it's granted he's got a good agent in New York, but this guy's shooting campaigns every single damn week for the biggest companies in the world, and he's traveling all over, and he's constantly shooting campaign after campaign after campaign, and he's not relying on anything like Instagram to get his work.
But did he build his name back in the day before all of this nonsense?
Yeah, he was. Let's just say he was established. Yeah, but like a lot of other,
and that's it. And that's where I think some new people and young people are struggling. Is like, I don't think like an agent, like you can't get an agent now unless
they're like, what is an agent, right?
Yeah. You've almost got to pay them to take you on now. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, like an agent won't take you on unless you've got 5 major, recurring brands in your back pocket giving you money. Like, yeah. I mean, a photographic agent was mandatory 20 years ago, but it's far less so now. Yeah.
We're all our own agents now, right? I think, for better or for worse, because social, depending on your social media skills and the time that you have to sort of devote to that and being present or omnipresent on all the different platforms, that's going to directly relate the bell curve of your, the beginning of the bell curve of your ascension to popularity, right?
Sure.
Yeah, it is. The whole thing is interesting. I want to talk about that. I want to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to dive into social media a little bit further and sort of drill down a little bit into the idea of what success looks like on social. We're going to do that right after this. This episode of This Week in Photo is brought to you by Creative Live. Head over to creativelive.com and choose from over 1,000 amazing courses. Use the code TWiP10 at checkout to get $10 off your first purchase. This episode of TWiP is brought to you by DataColor and the new SpyderX Pro. The SpyderX Pro is designed for serious photographers and designers seeking a fast, accurate, and easy-to-use monitor calibration solution. You can check out the SpyderX Pro at spiderx.datacolor.com. So like I said before that quick little interruption, I want to talk about the idea of social media and how what is success on social media. And if we had asked that question, about a year or so ago, it would have been, okay, you got to put all your engines behind social, and you could even rank the social networks, maybe 2 years ago. You could say, okay, you got to be on Facebook. Of course, everybody's on Facebook. You got to have a Facebook group. Okay, and you got to be on Twitter. Of course, everybody's on Twitter. Back then it was 140 characters. Now it's 280. And you also have to be on Instagram. Of course, you're a photographer. Anybody worth their salt is on Instagram. And some of the younger, quote, younger photographers only have Instagram, so they don't have a physical website presence at all.
Those guys, don't even have a website. No.
Yeah. So fast forward to today. Wayne Johns, I'll throw it to you first, man. Fast forward to today, 2019, 2020, 2021. Jeez. It sounds like science fiction. But you throw
Make me sweat thinking about that.
I know. Are we supposed to have flying cars now? But you throw it to today. Is that still true? I mean, is it still that you need to have that hierarchy or that sort of constellation of social media planets or moons around your planet? What do you think?
I think it is to a degree, like I just gave that example previously that, some people are out there just working their asses off and still pounding pavements and being in front of people physically. And then there are other people that are taking advantage of the benefits of social media that are getting the right effect and return from their efforts. And it's working for them. And then you get, I think, the mass majority that are working their asses off. And it's, like throwing water in the wind, they're trying their hardest, but don't seem to be really gaining any ground. But then again, I don't know how many accounts are on Instagram, how many millions of people have accounts on there, and how does that fare around the world to get the right people to see you? How do you get an ad agency to see you on Instagram when they've seen 300,000 other photographers? How do they stumble across you? I think that's a big question.
Yeah, whenever you see somebody rise up from that just colossal noise, like you just said, Wayne, like whenever you see somebody rise up from that, it's nearly always because they're doing something different. It's nearly always because they're doing something interesting. It's nearly always because they are catching the attention for something that they're doing that is individual to them. And the reason I make that distinction is because it's my opinion that it's just simply just not good enough to be great at what you do anymore. It's just not simply good enough to be excellent at what you do if you can't make that work stand out. Second to that as well is I think that you need to understand who your audience is. There's plenty of shooters who work in their local area, and like social media is less of a major impact for them because social media is so broad. Somebody like yourself, Frederick, or me, or Wayne, who like if I'm selling videos or whatever it is, then social media is I can reach everybody across the globe with that. So that's definitely the best vehicle for me. But for people who are what I call like a postcode shooter or a zip code shooter who just do photographic work within their area, then that's potentially not the right audience for them. So I think it's horses for courses to a certain extent.
Yeah. Even if you're a zip or postcode shooter, right, you still want those clients to see that you are known all over the world, right? So and people are using social media as a metric to gauge popularity, for better or for worse. People they're going to look at, if you meet a new person, they're going to look at your follower count to gauge how important you are, right? Which is
crazy because some of those zip code shooters could be incredibly successful, make a very comfortable living, do very good at their craft, but may only have 2,000 followers on Instagram because they don't need that following because their local area is enough for what they do.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to justify it as well as like, if do you really want 10,000 followers, and is it going to make your status in the industry any more prevalent? Is it going to make you better? Is it going to get you any more clients? If it's not, and pounding a pavement and physically being in front of people is going to benefit your business more, then that's where you should be putting your time and not wasting your energies on social media when it's just washing away with the rain. It almost becomes a pointless exercise, and you would gain more money by going back to physical attributes for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna remind the listeners and watchers that this is as we record this is a live show. And if you're in the chat room, make sure you throw your question in there, because we're going to answer questions in a couple minutes when we get to the Q&A segment. But before we do that, there's a question that Brian, or not a question, it's more of a statement that Brian Coate put in the chat. I want to bring this into the show. And Brian says, I find myself concentrating on social media less now and spending my time getting better at my craft. The results are I get work on a weekly basis he got work on a weekly basis for the last year. Now that's sad, and it's good and sad, right? Because you're not getting better at your craft, but and now you're eating better, right? So how do you balance that?
Wayne,
you can go ahead and take it.
Okay, yeah. So it's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, I think you've got to see where you want to be and where you want to go, because I mean, Instagram can be so unreliable, and nothing's guaranteed. And I think the thing with Instagram is we're easily distracted when we're scrolling through our phone screens, just aimlessly looking at stuff that's not relevant to us, that has no interest to us. So I think if you're a client looking for, say, a photographer, then you will be searching through Instagram with purpose, with meaning. You're looking for something specific. But at the same time, you've got to go through 3,000 other images and 3,000 accounts that are non-relevant.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to ask yourself, where are your efforts best spent and your time? And is it worth, because we are a nation of distraction with social media. I mean, Facebook, I call it dead book in my house, but, it sort of takes you away from everything. People are messaging what their hamster's eating for breakfast, and they're texting while they're pushing their kids down the road and walking the dog, and nobody's looking up from their bloody phones nowadays. It's sort of, mind washing everybody.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to establish what's important in your life. And if you feel you're one of those people that are being sucked in digitally to social media on mobile devices, maybe it's time to stop and ask yourself that question. It's like, shit, man, I need to be putting more effort into my physical skill, my physical business, my workload, and getting some work in and getting noticed.
Yeah. It reminds me of a book I read that was talking about, I forget what it was. It might have been Rich Dad, Poor Dad or something, but it was talking about the idea of there are multiple kinds of people, but if you break people up into two categories, there are people that know how to market well and maybe mediocre at their craft or average at best. And then there are people that are amazing at their craft and that don't know how to market well. Who's going to eat better at the end of the day, right? It's going to be the marketer. I think what we're saying here is
true, but
you got to be
who's
good
going to be
at both.
happier at the end of the day as well?
Who's going to be happier? But you want to be. I want to be happy. I think you got to solve for being great at both, if that's possible, especially if you want to make a living at this thing that you're doing, or else I think the thing will suffer if you're living under an underpass, right, and begging for quarters to support your art. You need to be better at marketing so that you can eat well and be well known and enjoy that ego boost of notoriety and make your craft get better, upgrade your camera from now to, it's like...
It's not much to ask, is it, Fred?
No.
Much to ask. Just come on. I just need all of those things just to make it happen.
Come on. What's the point? Just do it.
I think you can buy that in a package, like a red letter day or something, can you?
I think it's possible. I think many have done it. I think you guys are examples of people that are doing it successfully. I mean, you guys have great followings. Your talents. I mean, people can just go to your websites and look at what you know how to do. People just wish they could shoot like you, and they probably wish they had your backgrounds. If they watch the interviews that I've did with each of you individually, your backgrounds are amazing. So Jake, let me on the heels of that, let me throw this at you. If you look, people that are watching this, if you look to the past and the steps it took to get to where you are versus, let's say Jake of 2015, 2012, 2000, right? That Jake versus Jake of 2019. What would Jake of 2019, how would that Jake advise the younger Jake, and how would the younger Jake advise older Jake?
Wow.
This is a question. Yeah. This is a question for the man that's up in the middle of the night.
That may be an easy one for you at 6-7 p.m. in the evening, Frederick. But
well, start with okay. Let me put a finer point on it, because that was kind of convoluted, I'll admit. Okay, if you want to build an audience, if you were building an audience back in 2012. What were the steps to build that audience back then versus what are the steps to build that audience for a person with the same level of talent in 2019? That's easier.
Exactly. And I think that we're getting to the root of the issue here, which is why we're probably talking about this at all, is the fact that I think that things are changing. I think the way that we get attention is changing. And that's why it's certainly been in the forefront of my mind recently, is that I do believe attention spans are getting a little bit shorter, and I do believe that we, as photographers, whether we like it or not, perhaps need to adjust with that compared to what Wayne and I were maybe doing 10 years ago in terms of getting like big projects and getting that sort of sledgehammer effect. I think we can't do that now. So I think, you know, what we need to be doing now is almost putting out quantity over quality, if that's something that you can live with, if you want to go down the route of being popular and then trying to monetize that popularity, which is certainly possible.
Yeah. Wayne, what about this? If you look at it from this, I'm not gonna make it as convoluted as I did the Jake question.
Thank you in advance.
Yeah, of course. If you were to split learning, you know, doubling down on learning social media, getting good at Facebook ads and Twitter ads and Instagram advertising, and you know how to use those things like, you know, like the back of your hand, versus getting better at your craft. You know, because there's only a finite number of hours in the day, in the week, in the year, right? So how do you split that up? How do you split the currency that is your, you know, irreplaceable time between learning social and learning photography? Is there a 50-50 balance, or is it imbalanced?
Yeah, it's imbalanced. And I think, I mean, personally, my opinion is I think you've got to schedule your time carefully with that. Excuse me. And you know, I've got into a habit recently of making Instagram posts, and you know, I'll sit down and I'll make 10 or 20 of them in advance. And I use something called Adobe Spark on the mobile phones or on the desktops, and I'll make about 20 of them. I make them sort of Instagram portrait and Instagram story. So you know, I make the various options. Now they're sitting in there. I might take an hour in the morning or 2 hours in the morning and make 20 of those. And, you know, if I equate that now to 2 posts a day, then that's 10 days worth. So I've done that in an hour. And then I only need to flick on it in the morning and just post it up. Hashtags and things, I have them pre-written in my notes section, and I've short-coded them as HT1. I just have to type in HT1 and it drops in 25 hashtags, you know, and change them accordingly. That's streamlining a little bit. Do I see it has a massive difference and impact on Instagram on the return of interest on it? Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. So I think you need to go above and beyond that to get any organic growth, or you then have to pay for sponsored ads to, you know, bring that network in. The influencer program, of course, was very big. Instagram have been crushing that at the moment and stopping that because there's a lot of fake influencer accounts, which we spoke about before, Frederick. But I would rather spend 75% of my time honing my skill sets and creating the beautiful imagery, because if I can't create it and get better and create new stuff every day anyway, then what am I going to post on Instagram? Yeah,
no, I agree.
I think being phenomenal at your craft is just a prerequisite, just like breathing in and out. It's just, you know, I agree.
Yeah, I look at it kind of, the analogy might be a restaurant, right? And yeah, you could market all day long and get people into the restaurant, but if you can't deliver, you know, an outstanding meal that gets people coming back, they're never going to come back again. So you gotta be able to be a chef and create the meal that's going to bring people in, and then market to get people in to get that meal. So that's that 1-2 punch. Yeah, Jake, what about what's the better? Is it better to have to make the metric for your success money? Like, I'm trying to reach this number by the end of the year or a quarter or whatever your number is, or is it better to make the metric number of followers or page views or something like that? Or is it a formula, or again, is it some sort of formula that's a combination of both? What do you think?
I think if you've got evidence and historical data to back up the fact that more followers equals more money in your account at the end of the year, which is possible, then sure, followers need to be your focus. But if it's going to be, you know, focusing on money, then I think we all need a goal. And I do think that necessity is sometimes the mother of invention. And I do think that artists perhaps need a fire under them sometimes to produce some of their best work. Does the risk of the rent payment not being there does that make for better art? That, that's arguable, but yeah, I do think that there is a happy balance between being driven by what you perceive to be great work and what you perceive to be saleable work. And I do think that a lot of professional photographers in this day and age are sort of torn between that, because a lot of what we class as great, exciting work that we would love to shoot is perhaps a little bit harder to sell day to day.
Yeah. And you hit on a vein there, because that's the personal projects versus saleable work, right? And sometimes they don't always align, right?
Show. Yeah, you're only ever going to be booked for the work that you show, and I preach that religiously about, just like your website doesn't need to all be, professional work if you don't potentially want to be booking the type of work that you've had up until that point. If you want to be going, I want to be shooting more editorials, then if you're not getting booked for them, then there's no way you are going to be booked for them unless you've got them on your portfolio. So you've got to stump up the cash, get a team together, rent out a location, go out, get a shoot done, and start shooting those editorial shots, start getting them on Instagram and your website. And then over time, hopefully, fingers crossed, with a little bit of luck, you'll start getting booked for those gigs. But unless you are showing what you shoot, then you're never going to be booked for what you want to shoot.
Yeah,
no, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and a lot of this presupposes that the photographer already knows what his or her genre is going to be, and they're reasonably.
That comes with time. That comes with time.
But it's scary, right? Because if we're talking about this, okay, you're on this vector and you're trying to figure this stuff out, and you're feeding the monkeys, as Gigi says, right? And you're doing that, and then suddenly you figure out, I don't really like these particular monkeys. I'm going to move over to those other monkeys and feed those. Do you have to rebuild your audience? Your skill set obviously is going to continue to grow as you do more, but as you try to figure out your genre, both of you guys have the benefit of knowing you have distinctive styles, each of you, right? So you already know what that is.
Because we've been doing it for a long time. There's no shortcut to that. There is no shortcut. I don't care how many damn videos you watch or how many books you read or how many podcasts you listen to. There is no shortcut to that photographic style. And that's the same with music or painting or anything like that. You've got to just keep shooting. And over time, it's only natural that you'll gravitate to shooting more of the stuff that you are passionate about and that you enjoy shooting, and that fundamentally is your style. And it's in all of us now. And there are some people maybe in the chat here who are like, oh, I'm not sure what my style is, I haven't quite developed it yet, but it's in you now. Like, you'll have certain preferences, whether it be food, colors, movies, like all those things is what makes you an individual and what makes your images stand out to you. It's just the fact that you need to extract that. Like, you're drawn to certain images. Look at those images, go away, choose 10 images that you love on the internet, and what are some of the similarities within those 10 images that you absolutely love? There's going to be characteristics, whether it be composition, color theory, architectural, anything like that. There are going to be characteristics in there that you are drawn to and that you love in other images. You need to make sure that you're putting those more and more into your own work, and then you'll end up loving your own work more. And that is essentially the foundation of a style. Yeah.
Wayne Johns, you agree with that, in terms of developing your own personal style?
Yeah, I do. But I think what people also got to realize as well is that, our industry is changing at a much faster frequency now as well. If I take the fashion world, for example, as an example and point, we used to shoot big campaigns, and then 3 months down the line, that campaign would be released. I mean, now, these things are being released like every Thursday. It's now every week, not every 3 months or every 6 months. I mean, all manufacturers and designers and, all those companies are throwing this stuff out weekly now to feed the addiction of the consumer. Yeah. So how do you keep up with that and keep up with that change as well? You've got to adapt. Now, in the fashion world, you can go onto Google and go into the fashion search engines and find what's trending or what's trending in 3 months. So if you're that keen, and I'm sure you can do that for other industries as well. So if you're that keen, get online and do some research and start to see what's trending or what trending is coming up. Then go out there and shoot that damn stuff and get your work out online, because if there's art directors or art buyers looking for that kind of style and that kind of imagery, then you've already done it. You've already done the hard work. Then you're more likely to get seen, possibly.
If your main focus is money, then what Wayne's suggested there makes sense commercially. But if you're not going to be passionate about it, I just don't think you'll ever succeed. You know, yes, I think you can look at what's trending, and I think that yes, you can put together a cohesive project based on what's popular, but that takes a huge amount of skill if you're not passionate about it from the get-go. So I think it is possible, but if you really want to be happy with what you're doing, then you need to be shooting what you're passionate about.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and it's like Jake said, it takes a long time to find that niche as well. You know, you might start off on one thing, and then 2 years down the line, you go, actually, I like shooting like, you know, drinks campaigns and still life and bottles rather than people and fashion or landscape. People do change; they change their minds, but they only change their minds when they get introduced to those variants. Yeah, you know, you don't know if you like it until you've done it.
Yeah, and the other piece of it is, you know, a lot of, well, all younger people were brought up in this current sort of attention deficit disorder world, Jake, as you said, the Netflix world, the on-demand world, the short little nuggets instead of long form. And I wonder, you know, having that sort of background, is it harder to build that style? You know, because if it takes 10,000 hours to get good at anything, and then you're random accessing all over the place all the time, and you're not doing one thing for 10,000 hours, is it possible, or is it harder to get good at that one thing, Jake, than you know, the person that is sort of sequestered in a log cabin somewhere and they're learning how to whittle, and now they're a world-class whittler because that's all they had was a knife and some wood, right? Versus the person that has access to everything in the world and they have to kind of sift through it to figure out what gels with them. What's the solution there? Yeah,
I take your point. What you're saying there is that people get distracted by too many options to try and find out what they like.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's, you know, and for the people that I train and, you know, help that, you know, that little exercise that I've just given there is what I give them to do, because I think that when we're starting out, we can have a misconception of what we think makes a perfect photograph. And, you know, when I used to work in the studio, I used to get the new kids coming in who just left university or whatever, and they'd come in and they were, you know, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, you know, keen to get in the studio and start shooting. And, you know, I'd ask them, you know, list me 10 things that you think make a phenomenal photograph, you know, and they'd just write down, you know, sharp image, you know, in focus, aperture, correctly white balanced, you know, all that sort of stuff. And then I'd tell them to go away and find 10 images that they absolutely adored on the internet and bring them back. And how often did those 10 things that they wrote on the list correlate to the 10 images that they showed me? Of course they didn't. I mean, like, a shot being in focus and like correctly exposed and white balance is bullshit. That's a prerequisite. That's like saying a painting should contain paint. Like what they're really looking at in those images is bright, bold colors, whether it be exaggerated poses, whether it be dynamic lines. Like that's the images that they're looking at, and that's what they're drawing upon, and that's what they need to start putting into their own work. So yes, you're right, there is a huge amount of images out there, but I do think that we can use that to our advantage. We can look at what we love and then try and inject that back into our own work, rather than just taking the shotgun approach of picking up a camera and just photographing everything that's in front of us like a human photocopier, which is what I often see young people doing.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. All right, guys, let's take some questions. Before we do that, I want to ask a favor of the audience. If you're enjoying this stream / video, give us a thumbs up or a like or whatever, so that, you know, we can bubble up in the algorithm that is the evil social media. I mean, the social media. The social media. It's like I'm talking crap about my host as I'm living in their house, right?
I know, yeah.
The first question is kind of not really a question, but it is a statement. It is from Stephen Sharf. Stephen wants to know, Jake, what kind of motorcycle you ride. See, he spied that helmet back there, just like I did.
Yeah, that's years ago. I haven't ridden one in many years. It used to be an old Kawasaki Ninja, but that was like 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, I haven't had one in a long time.
No, yeah,
children sized.
Yeah,
that's it. It had 3 wheels.
Yeah. Stephen also, here's another one from Stephen. Stephen says, the way to navigate through the noise is with real signal. In other words, quality over content. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree that it's all about quality. But today you gotta, like Jake, you were saying, there's that other piece as well. You can't be you know, a world-class artist in the middle of a forest and wondering why nobody's seeing your stuff, right? So,
and just producing one phenomenal image a year, I think that it is like that exists, you know, and that is definitely more the fine art side of the world rather than the photographic side of the world. You know, yes, you can produce 1 or 2 outstanding masterpieces a year, but I think that's far harder to do, in my opinion. Yeah.
Nowadays it is. Nowadays, you know, legendary status, as we spoke earlier today, actually, Jake, wasn't it? You know, trying to be a legend in this industry nowadays is no easy task like it used to be 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
I would argue that we've seen the last of the Tostinos, you know.
Yeah.
Is that over? Like the era when you could, you know, that would produce an Annie Leibovitz or somebody that was just synonymous with a certain genre of photography?
That's a household name. Yeah. And that was back in a time where there was fewer professionals at the top. Yes. Now there is so many that it's very difficult to have a household name anymore. And I do think that the Tostinos and the Leibovitzes are perhaps maybe of a bygone era.
I was going to say a bygone era. You agree? You agree?
Yeah, I agree. You know, gone are the days where, you know, a Tim Walker or Patrick Demarchelier status remains now. And, you know, I've seen photographers come up in the last 10 years, but you won't remember their names now. Yeah. You know, unless you go 10 years plus back, I think you've lost the legendary, you know, standing in today's year, because there's too many, and they're ever changing so fast that nobody ever remains there long enough to become a legend in the first place. So
yeah, I mean, that's across genres though, right? Or not even just subgenres in photography, but that's across like that. We haven't seen any Princes or Michael Jacksons or Madonnas or, you know, these mega stars that used to be produced. We don't really, I mean, there's big stars like, you know, insert your favorite big artists, but none of these giant ones that, you know, people are crying at concerts because they can't get, you know, are those days just over across the board, you know, because of the internet?
Is it just our age though? Do you know, because I'm convinced that 90s music was as good as it ever got. Like, it's been terrible since then, you know.
I agree.
But that's obviously because that's the generation that was important to me.
No, it's because it's true. It's true. Yeah.
You're getting old, Jake. You're getting old.
That's it.
Yeah, 80s and 90s music. We got it. Yeah, we got to go. Yeah, it's funny. I was watching. God, what was it? The Versace documentary sort of story thing on Netflix. Okay. It's not a documentary; it's more of a docudrama or whatever. It's talking about Versace's death, and you know, it's sort of, it goes through the eras of his rise to popularity right up until when he was unfortunately murdered. But the soundtrack of the show is of those eras. You know, you're like Counting Crows and, you know, all those different artists in the background. I loved it. All right, let's continue with these questions. We got a couple more in here. Another one.
Trevor in the chat has said Justin Bieber is pretty major. So yeah, I mean, like, it's a fair comment. Maybe we're just out of touch, Frederick. That's all it is.
That's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I'm okay with being out of touch because I don't really want to touch what's out there.
I don't want to listen to any Bieber. Right.
No. And is he going to be still pretty major in another 10 years? You know, like the Rolling Stones are still going on 50 years later.
True. Yeah. That's a fair comment, Wayne. Yeah. I mean, like the Rolling Stones are, you know, and Beatles. I mean, they've spanned generations. It is hard to believe that some of the hugest names now are going to span generations.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Steven's another question from Steven. He says, can you differentiate yourself with a singular enough identity that you can obtain a small but very clearly defined audience? And I would add on to that, can you, assuming you're trying to make a business out of this as well, can you squeeze enough revenue out of that small but clearly defined audience in order to sustain yourself so that you can continue making art? You got to prime the pump.
I would say it's far easier to do that than not. Put it like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because smaller is easier, right? So in niche,
yeah, like if you've got a niche, then you know where you're targeting for one, okay? And people know what they're getting. You know, they're not coming to you for A, B, C, and D. They're not asking. You know, they're not coming to an architectural photographer and asking for baby portraits. You know, that just shouldn't happen anyway.
Yeah. All right, here's another question from Thomas Aaron. Thomas says, how do you develop notoriety as a photographer? McCurry, Adams, there are plenty of people making phenomenal photography. Yeah, I mean, we've been kind of talking about that, you know, notoriety, and this is all subjective, right? Because there's being noticed, and then there's notoriety, and then there's fame, and then, you know, there's all that. And which one do you want? Like, I would argue that you guys have notoriety and fame, you know, and skills to power the notoriety and fame. Is it important to have all that? I mean, should people be modeling you guys, for example, to like, okay, I want to be like Wayne, so I'm going to do everything Wayne did. I'm going to buy the lenses and cameras that he shoots with. I'm going to host my website on the same host that he uses. All that stuff. What do you say to that, Wayne?
Yeah, it's I don't know, really. I don't know. It's like I think it's almost going back to that legendary status a bit as well, isn't it? That notoriety is like, do you get that anymore? Mm-hmm. Do you just go and buy everything to be like someone else, or are you just then not having your own identity and going out there and, you know, getting your own worth from it and getting your own fame?
Notoriety is one thing, but being able to monetize that notoriety, that's what's fundamentally important, really. And trickier
now. Yeah, certainly. But,
all right, here's one for Jake here, also from Thomas Aaron. He said, Jake Hicks, what's that over your left shoulder, the metal tubular thing? I'm guessing that's a light stand or something, right?
Oh, it's a C-stand. Yeah. Just, leaning against the, but behind the sofa here is just all chock full of camera gear. Yeah.
Nice.
The sofa is slowly getting closer and closer to the TV, put it like that.
Hey, priorities, man.
300 cameras stored in behind
exactly.
the sofa.
Let's see, what other questions do we have in here? Okay, here's let's see. Okay, here's one from Gigi. This is a really good one here. Okay, so Gigi wants to know what's the best way to market today for a photographer? And that's, you know, like that kind of piggybacks on what I was saying earlier. I mean, do you need to become good at Facebook? Is it better become just organic Facebook? Like, I'm just going to start posting a lot and the algorithm is going to notice me and, you know, I'm going to get seen. Or do you need to like take a loan out and start trickling money into Facebook's account so that they can?
It's just not as simple as that. People are so quick to go how terrible Facebook is and start slagging off Facebook. And I get it. Yet we're staring down the barrel of that's exactly what Instagram is going to be in a few years' time. You're a fool if you don't think that's going to happen. So there's no point in moaning about what's burning. It's about what's burning in front of you that we know that we need to be worried about, and we need to be thinking about what's ahead of that. You know, people going, oh yeah, I'm on Instagram and that's all. That's great, but that's, you know, we need to be thinking beyond that.
Yeah. What do you say, Wayne?
And I think a good piece of advice is, you know, if I was going to go back in time, I would have definitely taken, you know, a business studies course, business management, you know, which I never did. You know, I would definitely have studied business management because I think that is definitely a must nowadays, rather than just having a skill set. You've got to know how to run your business more so nowadays than ever, I feel.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, same token, I think business-wise, it depends what your business is and what area you're in. You know, whether, like we were just saying, is your area and your market quite small? Is it local to where you live, your community or your town, your city? Can you get enough business from that to substantiate where you want to go in life with your business, or do you need to be global? So I think the different markets and different approaches are needed for each one.
Yeah, it's an equation, right? How do you what's the number that it's going to take for you to survive, and then what's the next number up from that for you to thrive, right? And then you kind of work backwards from there. Here's another question. This one's from Trevor Pinocchi. Trevor says, "What about the idea that the artist has to be as marketable as the work? That people are drawn as much to the personality as the work, I'm guessing." Drawn as much to the personality as the work itself. Which do you focus on? Wayne, what do you think? So are you synonymous with your work? I mean, when you market, are you marketing your work as well as, you know, Wayne Johns? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I think you've got to, no matter what you do, you know, as a photographer, your work is you and you are your work. So when you put those together, you're a brand. You know, you've got to represent yourself as a brand, whether you do that individually with your face and your personality to then push your work, or it works vice versa. You still got to think as your company as a brand, and you've got to push that brand out there, certainly. I kind of miss the days where it used to be face-to-face business, because people get to meet your personality. Now people are looking for your images online and they don't even know what you look like. I've had people contacting me going, "Hey, John, hi, just thought I'd drop you an email. My name's Wayne. For goddamn sake, my name's Wayne. Yeah. John's not hi, John. You haven't even read my name properly, and you're sort of approaching me with things. The lack of attention to basic detail. You know?
Well, hey, that's your own fault for having two.
Yeah, my fault. Yeah. but you know, if you've got a really nice, warming, sort of addictive personality, then that needs to be in front of people, because nobody can see that in social media.
Yeah,
you know,
is that necessary though?
I think it's a mix. I think you should still mix it in and not dismiss it completely, because relying on just social media permanently and having no face-to-face with any client, I think, is a bit of a sad thing. But it's where businesses and bonds, relationships, because you don't just go to a client for that one job. So when you go and see that client, they start, you know, liking your personality and liking you as a person and everything you're saying, and you build a rapport. They then remember you for the next time because of your personality as well as your work.
Yeah. Well, so does that mean, you know, sort of the introverts and the people that don't have outgoing and or aren't necessarily personable and don't work well in crowds? Are they at a disadvantage to the slightly less talented person that is outgoing?
That's a hard question.
Yeah,
people that wear silly items of clothing just to stand out as a desperate need of affirmation of self-worth in a dying industry of artists. It's like,
what are you saying, Jake?
Man.
What are you saying?
It's just painful.
I know who you're talking about, Jake Hicks. I know.
Like, just be yourself, and not everybody's going to like you, and that's totally fine. You know, you need to find your tribe, and those people will respect you for what you do, and that's, you know, and I think that's important. Is it important to have a brand with a face behind it? I mean, I suppose it's been around, you know, the Warhol and all that sort of thing, or the fashion industry is obviously, you know, full of those people who are very, like, their own person is a visual brand in itself. But I think it depends on what you're selling. If you're just trying to shoot weddings and that sort of stuff, then I think people will feel a lot more comfortable if they can look at you even in a video or something like that and see that you seem like a nice, chilled out person. It's like, I'm more than happy to have that person at my wedding, for example, as opposed to, I'm going to book this wedding, there's beautiful images, but there's going to be a stranger that's going to turn up on my most memorable day of my life. I don't know how I'm feeling about that, you know?
Right. No, exactly. Cool. Thomas Aaron has another question. He says, question for both Wayne and Jake. How much of your success was built on what you know versus who you know?
Ooh, good question.
Wayne, why don't you take that? Because you have a storied history behind, you know, sort of dropping out of sight and coming back in and all that.
Oh, yeah, been 6 years out. Yeah. In that respect, if you use that as prime example, and what the people in the chat rooms may not know, I had to drop out of the industry for 6 years due to a spinal injury. And when I came back, I went back to some of my previous clients like Vogue and things like that, and give them a phone call, told them I'm back in the industry. My reply was, sorry, who are you? So, you know, because the person that I used to deal with is not there anymore. So, I'm completely unknown. I have to start from ground zero all over again, which I've got to say was damn hard coming back into it, 100%. So what you know versus who you know, it's always been political. My industry, the fashion industry, has always been very political. And it has always been more of who you know than what you know. I still think it sits there. And I just think that the fashion industry is still in that catty sort of era where it's still the same, but it's been diluted. It's been sort of, you know, diluted a little bit, but it's still there. It's definitely still who you know rather than what you know. Other photographic industries, advertising and things like that, probably completely different.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think you need to know what you're talking about before you can meet the people in the know.
Well, I've seen
you sound like Donald's run. You don't know what you know. You don't know what you don't know.
I've seen some that don't know. I've seen somebody get in on a massive commission job because of who they know, who their parents know, Yeah,
Okay.
their skill set is so mediocre and down amateur levels, but they only got that job because of who they knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or in some cases, based on today's news about how you just need a couple $100,000, you can get into any Ivy League college you want. Right? It's like who you know and how many Benjamins you have. Right? Yeah, that's it. So, all right, guys. So here's another question from Tom Sarin. He says, how important is it to cross-train, practice in various niches to obtain that 10,000 hours of practice? Should you be cross-training? I mean, should you be, if you want to be like Jake Hicks, should I, it's all, I don't care. It's all about, I'm going to learn how to communicate with models, get beautiful models. I'm going to learn everything there is about light and lighting and gels and all that. And I'm going to do that for 10,000 hours. Or should I be cross-training and learning portraiture, regular portraiture, fashion portraiture, landscape, aerial, all that stuff? What do you think? Is focus important?
I think there is cross-pollination in different genres in terms of training and what can be applied from still life lighting. I can certainly apply in my portrait lighting. So yeah, like you can certainly gain knowledge from different areas of our field, but I think you will always be drawn to what you want to shoot. And if you're not doing that, then you're an idiot. You need to be, there's no point in forcing yourself to do something that you're not enjoying. If something piques your interest, I've actually started to bring in some very old still life lighting techniques that were used years ago and trying to implement them into modern portraits. And it's been an interesting idea, and it's like some of them are ingenious, but you just don't see them used in portraits. So yes, I do think that there is the ability to cross-pollinate like that, but I think you just always need to be shooting what you want to shoot rather than forcing yourself to do stuff that you don't want to.
Yeah, because that's not sustainable, right? Do you have anything to add to that, Wayne?
No, I completely agree with that. I mean, I think you've got to be true to who you are, and obviously be sensible to obviously where you live in the area you're in. If you're in New York City, maybe being an expert tractor automotive photographer may not be the best place for you to be in New York City. So I think you gotta,
location
may be the wrong one. But but I completely agree with that. I think you'll always be drawn back to the root of what excites you and what really interests you as an individual. So I think. If you want to shoot children's portraits, you may go and shoot ecom just to pay the bills. Because ecom, is mind numbing, as people know that are in it. But it's a necessity because you've got to pay those bills to free up the time for you to build your portfolio of children photography for you to be able to go on your own later on. So one feeds the other, maybe for a short while.
I did that for years in a studio. I was a salary man in a studio for 6 or 7 years, doing baby portraits, family portraits, corporate headshots, just anything that came in through the door. And in fairness, that was a great learning experience for me because it forced me to learn so many different disciplines of stuff that maybe I wouldn't ordinarily shoot unless I had to. But I wasn't forced into it. I was being paid an hourly rate, as it were, and that was a great way of learning all those things. And it certainly helped me to understand what I liked and didn't like, put it like that. Working in a studio, I would recommend that to anybody. It's soul destroying and very, very difficult, like Wayne said, with econ and that sort of stuff. It's very, very difficult, but it's definitely worth doing to get those hours behind the lens. There's no shortcut for that level of learning.
Yep, I agree. Motion memory and repetition, right? Next question. This is good. This is a good one to sort of close out on or get close to closing out. Stephen Sharf says, so at this point, what is the consensus by the panel? Is it quality or quantity? What do you guys think? Which one is it?
I think quality is a prerequisite, and then you need to be pushing out the quantity of quality.
Build a nice quality race car and then learn to drive it, right?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, good analogy.
Yeah, I'm analogy man today.
You got to have the quality. There's no good having a £20,000 camera that you don't know how to operate and shoot snaps of you walking to the park of 3,000 steps. There's no quality to that, is there? It's just quantity of nothing, really.
Yeah. Here's another
quality one. gets you in through the door, and and that's just a baseline. Yeah.
Janet Robinson. Hey, Janet. She has a question in here. She says, do you think that the abundance of cameras and gear has helped to elevate so many photographers to a higher level than they may have been back in the film days? Yeah, right. It's so, I mean, and you could throw in their camera phones too, because, you know, with augmented reality and computational photography going on, it's getting hard to take a bad photo, right? So has the abundance of awesome tech, Jake, we'll start with you, and then Wayne, you can take it. The abundance of awesome tech, has that sort of given us a false group of competent photographers?
So what you're saying there is that any monkey can take a half decent picture.
Pretty much, yeah. Thank you for boiling it down to the salt. Yeah.
There was a legal case about that recently, wasn't it, when the monkey pressed the button?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, I do think that that the reason we're having this conversation about how to stand out from the crowd is that the baseline of good photography is now incredibly high. You know, it was very difficult to take an image, process it, and actually get it onto paper. You know, years ago, you needed an actual certain amount of knowledge and skill to even be able to do that. And now, of course, you know, with everything being automated and then just unbelievable apps and stuff on your phone and that sort of thing. I've seen somebody sent me an app the other day going, look, I can add colored gelled lights to my regular profile picture with this app, and it's incredible what's out there at the moment. It's just unbelievable. So if it's easy to be excellent, then you have to again differentiate yourself. So it's not just about the gear. You know, you really do have to be putting your own element into it. It's not just about the camera or the app that you use. You have to be putting some of your own soul in there, if you like.
But it's still, I mean, to her point, it's still easier to get there, right? Well, you know, I mean, that could be for any technology, though, right? I mean, it's just called progress. You know, you could say, well, it used to take a whole lot of specialized skill and you know, inherited competency from previous generations in order to till and do grow crops on a farm, and not so much, right?
A hammer was a technological advancement at one point, but you
still trying to learn how to build
a shack or a boat, or like it's up to you what you do with that. That I think is the key.
Yeah. Agreed. Wayne, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I definitely think modern technology's given us an influx of everything, that's for sure.
Yeah, look at that shelf behind you.
Whether we like it or not, whether it's good or bad, it certainly gives a fair mixture of both. I think I think the good thing is, and this is a nice thing for people that actually wanted to do photography but weren't technical to understand it back in the day, is that with the technology so good and so automated, people that have an eye for a shot or a composition, but they're not technical and they don't know how to operate a camera in manual form to get all those effects, they can still go out there and shoot that shot and have something really, really nice. And I think that's wonderful. In a commercial world, in terms of business and clients, is that going to work and get you through? Probably not, because you're missing the whole process, the pre-production, the production, the post-production process of a business and a shoot. Everything that goes into it, you still don't have that knowledge, which obviously anybody can learn, but that's not really part of that question. But I think it helps, and I think it's good in one respect. Yeah, but it's definitely given us an influx.
Yeah. Excellent. I think that was the last question. Apologies if I missed anyone's question today. I don't have the benefit of Chris Berry, who's our community manager. I think I let him know about this show too late, so we didn't get him in. So
can't get this done.
It's all my fault. All right, guys, let's wrap this up and close it off. Wayne Johns, if people want to connect with you and see your work or even hire you, what's a good place for them to start at?
Well, if you want to hire me, you can just send me an email to info@waynejohns.com. That's the easiest direct route, and that'll come straight through. You can go to my website, waynejohns.com. Instagram is waynejohns_photographer, pretty much the same on Facebook. And I've got some stuff on YouTube as well. And, of course, our podcast channel, Podlemania, if people want to go and have a listen to some of our stuff that's growing nicely.
Yeah, give us both of you guys. Tell us about that a little bit before we hang up. Like, what's that show about? Like, is it an interview show? Is it just you guys talking?
Yeah.
Like, what is it?
No, it's Podlemania is an interview show. It is a guest interview show, and basically wanted to put something together that was interviewing creatives from both the photographic and video film industry, but not just the main key characters like the photographer or the videographer. We wanted to include everybody that makes up our industries from those creative fields, from the makeup artists, the models, the art directors, the model agencies, to the director, the editors, the color graders, the gaffers, the lighting crews, all those kind of people that make that up. And we've got amazing guests coming up.
And it's not just about the big name people either. Like Wayne and I spoke to a guy last week, Bradley Michael Creative he was, and he has this unique ability to only see in black and white, if you can believe that, and has done since he was 4. And he was talking about his process of how he deals with color. He shoots phenomenal color images, and they are perfectly color balanced. Skin tones look beautiful, and it's like people who can see full color struggle to do that. Like, how are you able to do that? And so really the show for me is about trying to get to speak to some of those people who have a unique vision, as it were, as well.
And that episode's coming out next week, so have a listen to that, because that will really mess with your mind trying to understand some of those processes of.
That guy literally sees the Matrix.
Yeah.
He sees the colors as numbers. Yeah.
Where is it again? Where can people find the podcast?
Yeah, that's Podlemania. You can find it on all basically the podcasting platforms like Apple Podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. Google Podcasts, Podbean is our host, so they're the main ones to go for.
Say the name really slow for us.
Podlemania. So it's Podlamania. Podlemania, all one word.
Awesome, Podlemania, perfect. All right, Jake Hicks, what about you, man? People want to follow you, buy courses from you, or otherwise be trained by you, or hire you. Where should they go?
All roads lead to and from jakehicksphotography.com.
Nice.
So you can find everything you need to on there. And if most social handles are the same, if it's not Jake Hicks Photography, then it's Jake Hicks Photo. But yeah, just put it in Google and you'll get a lot of very colorful images. You can't miss them.
All right. Yeah. Colorful is your word, man. I love that. I love your work. Your work is amazing. And both of you guys have courses up on pro.edu, right? I believe that's right. On RGG, now pro.edu.
I've got I've got a color gelled portrait tutorial, which was I'll just add this to the reference for the topic of what we're talking about. So that was filmed about 2 or 3 years ago, and that was 22 hours. Then I brought out a long exposure tutorial, and that was 8 hours long, and that was a year ago. So we can only assume the future of online education is going to get shorter and shorter and shorter as well.
Yeah.
Your sessions are going to be 20 minutes soon, Jake. You know that.
That's it, man. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. We didn't get a chance to touch on that, the online education part, but I do think that, it may seem the simplest route to check out a 10-minute YouTube video, but I think sometimes watching a photographer struggle and get things wrong can sometimes be more valuable than watching them just get a perfect shoot straight off the bat.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I do think there is. Yeah, exactly. I do think there is value in. I certainly think there is value in seeing some of those longer form content. Yeah.
Yeah, we certainly don't get things right straight off the bat.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, no way.
You're practicing photographers versus, just like doctors. How come doctors and lawyers get to practice, but photographers have to be professional when it's an art?
I like it. Yeah. It's worrying though. Yeah, I'm a practicing doctor. Really?
Yeah, exactly. I'll get it right on the next patient.
Practice on the next guy.
All right, guys. Well, thank you both so much for coming on. I appreciate your time tonight / this morning over where you guys are.
Yeah. 2:25 a.m. Frederick. Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Well, it's Miller time here or whatever.
Always on there.
All right, guys. I hope you guys will come back on. I think we need to do another part 2 of this show, and like Jake, like you said, maybe dive into a little bit deeper into the ADD side of how that is affecting everything from the length of tutorials to the length of podcasts to the length of people's attention on Instagram, all that stuff. I think
sure, and what that means for the future of what we're doing as well. You know, how much shorter can our content get?
Yeah, and how much more impactful does it need to be? Like if you're shooting and you want to put it on Instagram and grab someone's attention in a half a second before they scroll by, how do you do that? Whereas back in the day, it would be on, you'd have a little bit more time to grab their attention. Now they kind of have to grok what your image is and be seduced by it really quickly, or else, no one sees it.
Yeah, it's difficult to argue, but it could well be that my color gel style is maybe a byproduct of that sort of effort to try and catch people's attention.
Bright colors, yeah. All right. Well, hey, a byproduct of that, or just an indication of your marketing brilliance, Jake. So there you go.
Subconsciously, I have no control over it.
Well, this guy, I don't know, but your subconscious is brilliant. I don't know.
Exactly. I want to meet that subconscious guy because he seems like he knows what he's talking about.
He knows what he's doing. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll wrap it up right here.
Thanks, Frederick.
You're welcome. And folks in the chat room, thank you for participating and submitting your questions in there and watching us as we step through and tackle yet another difficult topic on This Week in Photo. If you want to follow us, obviously you can head over to thisweekinphoto.com. All of my roads lead there. So you can head over there. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can check out the critique sessions that we do. You can check out the TWiP store. TWiP is available on all the most popular and some of the most unpopular platforms. So we're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, we're on Spotify, we're on Google Play, we're everywhere. And now, as of a couple days ago, we're also on Twitch. So
trendy, Frederick.
I'm so trendy. I skate to where the puck is going to be, man. Come on.
Man, that is I was very impressed to see you on Twitch.
Hey, I'm trying to keep up. Just trying to keep up. Keep my head over water and making a wave when I can. All right. That's it. That's it for another episode of This Week in Photo. Once again, I want to thank our sponsor, who's the guys at Creative Live. If you want to get a $10 chunk of your bill taken off your next purchase over there, just use my name, TWiP10. Use TWiP10, that'll knock $10 off. And with that, it's time to take that lens cap off. This is TWiP. This episode of This Week in Photo is brought to you by Creative Live. Head over to creativelive.com and choose from over 1,000 amazing courses. Use the code TWiP10 at checkout to get $10 off your first purchase. This episode of TWiP is brought to you by DataColor and the new SpyderX Pro. The SpyderX Pro is designed for serious photographers and designers seeking a fast, accurate, and easy-to-use monitor calibration solution. You can check out the SpyderX Pro at spiderx.datacolor.com.